Wellness Show 160.
Welcome to the Wellness Show, a podcast on health and wealth. I'm your host, Tyson Bannigan, the founder of the Extraordinary Healing Arts Academy. Join me as we get the latest insight, tips, and strategies from wellness providers, coaches, and successful, heart-centered entrepreneurs, and much, much more.
Welcome to the Wellness Show, and we're live once again on Be Live TV. This is the third in the series of four. We're back with Michael O'Connor, and we're talking about humanistic astrology, and the topic is holism, healing, and holistic astrology. So welcome back to the show, Michael. It's good to have you on board again, and we're going to go a little bit deeper this time with a review of the first two shows.
Okay, thanks, Tyson. Yeah, a quick recap is always nice, just to catch us up to speed. And what I've been explaining is that astrology you see a history and an evolution of astrology. And we're at a place where it's becoming, and has been for some time now, but we're not talking centuries, we're talking decades, where it's becoming increasingly more psychological. So my humanistic astrology is also described as psychological astrology. In its maturity, it can be, a lot of astrologers who are into it refer to it as the evolved astrology. It still incorporates levels of prediction and so forth, which is more traditional astrology. And then there's ancient astrology, which is more ritual-based, entire cultures engaging in ceremonial activity to pray to the gods and all this communion, which is really beautiful too. And that can still be alive. All of them can still be alive. Again, traditional astrology sought to narrow down the probability so that they can predict what will happen with no undue, no mistake, with as much certainty as possible. Modern astrology or humanistic astrology says, let's not do that. Let's keep it more open, and it's more in tune with us as co-creators. It's more in tune with us as having co-creative power, and it weaves in the law of attraction, and it brings in words like relativity, and it says, for every probability that we can see astrologically, we can recognize that invites the opportunity for possibility, free will choice, whether we want to take the low road or the high road, or how we're going to respond to the situation, and so forth. So it weaves in a lot more flexibility at the level of prediction, at the level of traditional astrology. But also the humanistic astrology looks more deeply at who you are as a soul incarnate, and where you're at in your evolutionary journey, and what constitutes your deeper lessons, and why there's value even in the difficult things. So it takes that overall approach of, it's not all easy, but it's all good. We could say it's all God, if you like. Now, okay, so on that note, we say it's all God. It touches a little bit on the paradigm upon which astrology rests, which can be called the holistic paradigm, which stands with the understanding that the universe is conscious. We live in a conscious universe. And the scientific materialistic model maintains that matter precedes consciousness. Consciousness is a byproduct of the brain. The most sophisticated computer in existence, the brain, as if it was just going to made itself. That's the ridiculousness of it. The other model, the holistic or metaphysical model, says no. Matter emerges from consciousness. Consciousness comes first, and astrology proves that. So the reason why astrology, by the way, just a little aside, might be kind of denigrated by the scientific community is because it would be hard to admit, that'd be a lot of eating of crow, to imagine that consciousness does in fact precede matter. That's very threatening to people, to imagine that we live in a conscious universe which is purposeful, intentional, loving, creative, conscious, you know, and oh my God, and we are not only in it, we're not just a reflection of it, we're kind of an expression of it. You know, it's a oneness. We are one with it. We are an expression of it. All right. So you get this, we're in it and it's in us. And so we can say that it's not just a dualistic model of there's us and sort of like God, if you like. It's more like, where isn't God? It's an all-pervasive, multidimensional, conscious intelligence beyond all comprehension, and we are an expression of it, you know? And that's what makes it so exciting. To bring in that we're talking about how astrology works now. Now, where you get into the nitty-gritty with that. So there you go. Basically, that's it. We have this ancient, traditional, and modern astrology. Modern astrology is psycho-spiritual. It's not just psychological, like in a mainstream materialistic model of psychological. It's psychological in the psycho-spiritual sense, that psyche is the root of the word soul in Latin, soul, psyche. And we get into this, wow, we're souls incarnate, and we're evolving. That changes the whole perspective. And, you know, again, I mentioned last time, if we discuss, okay, does anybody believe in old souls? And a lot of people go, yeah, old souls. Okay, well, ergo, now you're in. Now you agree and recognize there's old souls. Therefore, there's other soul levels, other soul, you know, infant souls, baby souls, young souls, mature souls, old souls. There's a full spectrum of souls. There's different soul types. Like, we're all the same species, but we're all in the school of life at different levels. So this kind of understanding, now we see ourselves, when we look at our astrology, much different than some endeavor to predict what's going to happen, which at worst is a disempowerment process. That's the irony. Traditional astrology, which a lot of people want, they want that fortune telling, which is this sensational moment of me predicting the future or an astrologer. And in subtly, subconsciously, it kind of takes away the power and the responsibility simultaneously from the person. And secondly, if it doesn't come true, just the way you said it, they can now throw, you know, vegetables at you because you didn't quite predict it right. So there's this sort of double standard, subconscious little cynicism or lack of responsibility that goes on in a traditional astrological perspective, and it becomes easy target. Oh, you didn't predict it the way it was going to be out there, therefore it's all bogus, right? When you open up the door to a psycho-spiritual mindset, suddenly it goes, no, you're an evolving soul. You're here with lessons. You have a destiny. Your destiny includes free will. You're a co-creator. The future is probable, yes, but not certain. And that uncertainty principle is big. It's important. It makes life worth living in the sense that you can beat the odds. But with your free will, you could also blow it. You know, it's the very thing. So we understand it's not just some preordained, locked-in thing. It's more flexible. All right, so that brings us to the now. That's what modern evolved astrology does. But remember, there's still a lot of astrologers still operating on traditional astrology. I'm the astrologer. I'm going to predict your future. There's a lot of us. There's some out there that are just more ritual based, and that's quite wonderful too. Ceremonial, it's lovely. You know, new moons and eclipses, and they get all together, and there's this sort of opportunity to have, let's say, a spiritual, religious moment. That's nice. It doesn't have the same gravity in terms of the predictive science of astrology. So when you get into the science of astrology, you're into a whole series of techniques. It's really wonderful and brilliant, and it's not for the intellectual lightweight. You have to really work at it. The technical aspects of it aren't like as difficult, let's say, as advanced mathematics or physics. No, you can probably teach grade 11 students it, even 10, you know. But it's the how you interpret it. That's where it becomes very humanistic. It becomes a relationship between the astrologer and the client. It's not just a passive client listening, it's a dialogue. Generally, ideally, an astrologer might talk a lot, but ideally a modern astrologer, humanistic astrologer wants to check in. Does that make sense to you? Do you align with that? Do you resonate? And then more also, what might you do with that? How might you respond? How can you use this information in a co-creative way? That's the more where it's going. And starts touching on counseling, coaching, psychology. Astrology is like the tool of a depth psychology. We can see so deeply into people. You see where the person's at a soul level. So now we're not just using, let's say, the DCM model in psychology and saying, well, you have a personality disorder because da-da-da. It says, well, you know what, you're, now, you don't want to say this, but you might recognize that the person's at a certain soul level, so it's almost expected that they don't have it all together. They're like kids. How much do you expect in terms of maturity from kids? So it's an interesting way of looking at it, but there's a lot of truth in this understanding. Now when we get to the natal chart itself, we're looking at somebody's birth chart, right? We're seeing an archetypal blueprint of their destiny, and also in a more immediately interesting sense. The lens on I call it the lens on the projector. It's the filter on the projector lens. You can say it in a variety of ways. Metaphorically, the filter on the projector lens, which is creating a projection. We're projecting our archetypal nature out to the world, and that engages in the law of attraction. The law of attraction is suddenly operative. This is where, the law of attraction is out there, very popular. Some people are making a lot of money at it. Sort of you can become and have anything you want, and want a house and a car and a beautiful relationship, and it becomes promissory. It's like, this is snake oil a little bit. No, it's not quite like that. It says, look, your subconscious is projecting to, and it's projecting and attracting you to and attracting to you reflections of your deeper destiny, and it's not this pat notion of win or loser. This is kind of like, okay, well, if you're doing it well, you'd have 3 mansions and 6 cars, and you'd be rich, and you'd be healthy as hell. You have the perfect relationship. It's like, this is kind of like high school consciousness, this kind of thinking. Although it's not putting down that it's nice to aspire to various levels of success. Of course, we all want that. But at what point are we missing the point? At what point are we talking about materialism, greed, ambition? People talk about ambition. Oh, how about greed? We live in a society right now, people are like, we live in a community. Oh yeah? Well, how come everybody's gouging everybody? Like, we're kind of divided and conquered at worst because there's a materialistic paradigm there. So I'm saying a few things there. What I'm partially saying now is that astrology is revolutionary. It's very, the fact that it works at all, and it does, flies right in the face of the entire scientific model, which is materialistically based. Matter precedes consciousness. It says, no, that's not happening. No, consciousness precedes matter. There's a rhyme and reason. There's a purpose. There's a universe that's conscious, and etc. And that it's measurable. We can measure this. That's science. It's observable and measurable. Maybe we're not talking about a lab. We're talking about life, everyday life, and we see synchronicities and so forth. And the very cynical attitude is, oh, you're making it up. It's like, no, that's your little back door. That's your little convenient out. And, it's the sort of a cop-out. If you're going to be really scientific with this, you're going to engage in learning how it works, and you're going to engage in observation. And you're going to see, oh my God, this is true.
All right. I'd like to just, wow.
Okay.
Got a bit of a pause here between us.
You bet. That's good. That's a good recap.
I was going to ask, in the psycho-spiritual approach to astrology, is it that that's sort of the default that we go to? Is that sort of the lens in which we see the world? That's default. But I think you're saying something even more profound, which is once you know that that's your default or that's your lens, and because consciousness precedes the material creation, then we have a participatory, I want to say responsibility, and responsibility isn't the right word, but we could be responsible for our actions to create the world that we want to live in, and that this is our opportunity. If we understand the lens, the general projection, then we have some choices that we can make, whether to enhance that lens or to know what's coming in the way of our propensity towards which we view and understand and even comprehend the world. Is that what you're getting at when you talk about the lens and the
Yes,
fact that we have free will?
Yes, that's a very good synopsis, Tyson. That's it. It's participatory, cooperative, responsibility-based. Opportunity is in there. There's an opportunity to engage. And also, I must admit, it brings in meaning. A lot of people have a lot of money, but they don't have a lot of meaning in their life. It becomes profane. It becomes shallow. We're living in the celebration of the shallow at worst. Okay, for example, we have a lot of athletes, for example. They're making more money than God, each one of them, let alone they're just making millions and millions upon millions, but it's just relatively shallow. And it becomes a celebration of that. It doesn't share meaning. It becomes an overemphasis on pastime consciousness and not enough emphasis on what we would call genuine spiritual growth, which is not just a personal thing, but it is partially. It becomes a contribution factor. How can I participate in not only the co-creation of my life, but how can I participate in the co-creation of a better world? Nobody says one person needs to save the world, and maybe the world doesn't need to be saved entirely. What it needs to be is refined, purified. Society can be uplifted, elevated, refined. A higher culture of where we're involved in our leisure in self-cultivation, versus kind of a black and white reactive approach, which is I go to work, I make money, I get things, and then I run into trouble all the way, and I go to various counselors and healers and this and that, and I get fixed. It's kind of like missing the point. It's like, well, while going to healers and so forth and others is that, we have cars and go to mechanics. We have plumbing in the house, we get plumbers on occasion. We need on occasion to engage healers. It's really wonderful. We should, and they're destined. They're destined to be healers. So of course, if they are destined, then wow, it's going to mean something, and it's good. But a good healer, a true healer, like a good coach, like a good astrologer, wants to make what they're doing for you what you don't need anymore. They're not hooking you in. It's not like, oh, I've got a lifetime client now. Oh, good. We're on the gravy train of the endless journey of drugs, or hey, now that you've come and had a little healing session, I'll see you, next week and the week after, and hey, you're part. No. It's just like good coaching. It says the coach has to orient themselves to being unnecessary. That's what any good healer should, like a mechanic. You don't go to a mechanic like a car says, oh, good, I'll see you next month. The irony is that the mechanic wants to do such a good job that they're unnecessary in the respect of you going back and back and back. Now, and it's based on a society where there's people everywhere driving cars and needing mechanics, so they're busy enough anyway, and gotta look around, right? So it's not like, it becomes more of a broad-based understanding. So that's very important, that we become, that's what's called sincerity, that's what's called authenticity. It's not manipulative, it's not slick, it's not marketed to the nth. It's but of course people have to get it out there. Anyway, this touches, so what you said, yes, it's our invitation, it's our responsibility, it's our opportunity, it's our co-creative destiny to participate in not just, our own personal evolution, and really what could be called the evolution of society. When we think of, there's different types of evolution. There's species, there's person, and then there's civilization, right? civilization evolves. But as long as we're in a dangerous position right now, and Greg Braden, for example, did a good job making this clear, as are others. If we, with our technology, if we don't begin to evolve our consciousness, our sense of, our paradigm of self-growth and development and then contribution, we're in big trouble. You know, here comes the Hunger Games, or here comes the nuclear holocaust, and look, we've got, you know, two power players on the world stage right now kind of throwing insults at each other, and it's like there's a lot at stake here, right? We're talking about the United States and Korea, North Korea there, just for example. So it's, we have to take responsibility for, we realize, you know, we're meant to participate directly and indirectly. How do we do that? Indirectly, we become focused on our own evolution. And personal evolution means maturity, sincerity, a sense of contribution, that life becomes focused on meaningfulness. You know, as I was saying a little while ago, Tony Robbins was, once upon a time, he might have changed his attitude, but the meaning of life is the meaning you give it, which I kind of like, but no. The meaning of life is to live meaningfully. Although that does beg the question, it's not, it meaningfully kind of starts becoming more humanistically. It's as simple as that. Meaningful means that my life has meaning and purpose. And he lives that, to his credit, I just want to say. It's like, but meaning and purpose means I'm on purpose with a sense of contribution, not some narrow mission. Mission's good, but it can become very narrow. I've got this mission, right? And I'm, you know, and that becomes zealous, overzealous. But if we have a sense of purpose, then it can be balanced. There's equilibrium. We're living our own life. We're enjoying the flow. We smell the flowers, but we're contributing. But our contributions could be as basic as a smile that we give at the front counter. Anyway, I'll just say that because we can go on.
Are you suggesting that it would be very helpful to understand one's not mission, but possibly their life purpose? If you know the lens in which you're showing up in this incarnation, and you understand that with more clarity that will come from your natal chart, then you have a sense of what your life purpose is, and you're more likely to be able to become congruent with that in order to deliver it to the best of your ability.
Exactly.
And as you said, in order to fulfill a life's purpose, you have to be humanistic in the sense that it's greater than yourself. You have to be contributing to the concept of humanity, the furthering. So
exactly, which has been around forever. That you know, you're part of the tribe, you're part of the contributing. Everybody pitches in, right? So it's not like it's new, that concept. But now in this day and age where we have more opportunity to sort of just be conservative. Conservative has its place, privacy, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's all about to what degree. To what degree does conservative become exclusive? There's reclusive and exclusive. Reclusive and exclusive are, it's like extreme communism and extreme capitalism. They're extremes, right? But when we become inclusive, then we are, and with, you know, degrees of conservative, you know, privacy, honoring privacy is really beautiful and powerful and important, but inclusive. And it becomes, how we're inclusive is up to us partially. And our charts, yes, they're a reflection. So in other words, when I do readings, the initial portion of the reading is me playing back to the person what I see and asking them, does that sound like you? And what the answer is they say, that's like me in a way that nobody has ever quite said before, in a very profound, accurate way, right? Okay, so I call this the affirmational stage, just affirming who you are, but also that if I can say who you are, then A, I can see you, but that's not what's important. Is that the archetypal lens that I'm reading is showing me who you are. That's showing that you're in a conscious universe. So that does that. Secondly, this is where the healing comes in partially. And you said it indirectly. It's right. Alignment, congruency is where the person begins to, they know it all along. They're already doing it. It becomes very conscious. It's that one shift or two or three even above what they're currently functioning at. It's not like they don't have the capacity, because as soon as they hear it, it happened. They're like, that is me. And so then the reading starts to go in the direction. Now what the chart shows is this evolutionary process, which includes your own growth, which, by the way, can be everything from sharpening your mind to becoming more diplomatic in relationships, to becoming more developed in skills. It's very, very everyday, natural, and human and simple. It becomes the cultivation of these things. And in some respects, also, it can lend to how you might bring that to the world. Earn a living. Earn a living. It's not flaky. It's practical. Enjoy earning a living, but realize that the earning a living is the means, not the end. When earning a living is the end, we've missed the point. That's like the gas is not the end. It's the means. So but admittedly, let me rephrase one thing though. That's not quite correct. The process of and the quality of how we're engaged in the process of earning the living is what it is about. It's the evolutionary process, but it can also be defined as the integrative process. The integration, okay. And if your integration process is authentic, then it's, our destiny is really to be who we are. That's the first thing. And to do it well means we're growing and evolving and getting past our lessons, and we have more room and opportunity to contribute to our own betterment, to that of our family, our neighbors, our community, etc., that kind of thing. Okay. And also it manifests as an understanding that, okay, the integration, this is an interesting basic model of astrology, the sun, moon, earth model. Basically, the beginning of astrology is the relationship between the sun, moon, and earth. So the earth goes around the sun, but it appears that the sun goes around the earth. The moon goes around the earth, we know that, but it appears like the sun to go around us. What that produces is a waxing and waning moon. The waxing moon is the growth process, and the waning moon is the disintegration. Or we can say the waxing is the integration, and the waning is the disintegration. The same could be as consume, eliminate. It's a perfect natural system but when we bring integrate, disintegrate factor into our consciousness, then we know when to hold and when to fold and when to walk away, when to run, so to speak. What we know is here I'm integrating and here I'm letting go, or I'm dissolving my attachment, or I'm becoming, I recognize that the thrust of that has lived its time and it's not necessary anymore, and I turn my attention to new considerations. So people do these things. I want to offer that it's happening naturally, but when it's happening consciously, deliberately, that's an added factor of more clarity, more intention. And on the other hand, when that we can see it at all, that's where it comes back to the astrology as a system, that we can see it happening at all. It becomes a celebration of, oh my God, we sure live in a conscious universe. And wow, so it brings in this spiritual factor of, it's not just being a nice person and pat on the back and good for you and thanks very much for being a volunteer. It becomes almost obvious that we are engaged in our own growth, refinement, maturity, cultivation of character, of a sense of humility, of a sense of humanity, and all the words that you might add to that. And that we may find ourselves with a sense of purpose. That purpose could be as basic as putting your heart into sweeping the floor, or it could be putting your heart and soul into running the country. And now, nobody's going to say either of those are going to be absolutely perfect, but there is this transcendent aspect. That means it's more than about what it seems. So it begins to integrate.
All right, so those are some important points that you brought up. So you talked about the lens as being, this incarnation, this particular earth suit that you've arrived in, and the way in which it's configured because of the time that you were born, and the lens in which you're showing up this time around, as you go around the sun. You also talked about then there's cycles within cycles. And within that cycle is the moon cycle, which really has the ability, if you did a lunar planner, the opportunity to be very participatory in the process of the rising and falling, or the creation and the destruction, or the involution and the evolution of whatever it is that you want to co-create with the energies that are flowing through your lens, which is your natal chart. To me, that seems to be you're encouraging people to become participatory actors in understanding all these levels of wheels within wheels, or cycles within cycles. And so that seems to be a very encouraging, exciting way in which to show up and be fully alive and know what it is and how to deliver your purpose to the world. Now, you wanted me to remind you about the natal chart and the far planet. So I'm assuming that has something even more unique to offer to this. Is that correct?
Well, yes. Just one little quick recap. So what we're talking about in effect is an expanded interpretation of the word healing. Healing is not just I've got a boo-boo and I'm going to fix it with a Band-Aid or a broken arm or even an operation. Valid as that level of healing is, no question. That's the physical dimension of healing. But then there's a mental, emotional, spiritual level of healing. So healing can be described as restoring equilibrium and flow. Everything in the universe is always moving, and it wants to move with equilibrium, a sense of symmetry. So it's naturally always trying to get back to that. The consciousness of the universe doesn't work for failure. It always works towards harmony, symmetry, balance, flow. So all healing is oriented that way. In whatever form it occurs, whether it's a very physical form or very mental or emotional or spiritual, it always endeavors to achieve that. Let's say spiritual. Meditation is aligning a person with their inner voice, with their spirit. It could even be looked upon as aligning their subtle bodies. There are all kinds of techniques. It's more metaphysical. Emotional, of course, could be clearing old hurts that have been producing various blocks, and then they connect to the mind, and they distort perception, and we become angry, and we feel alone. And so there's all kinds of levels of healing, and what they do, once again, is they restore the flow, and in a means that represents equilibrium, harmony, symmetry, balance, etc. And that's a basic way of defining it. Now, when just astrologically, so humanistic astrology looks at this, who are you? It's the person-centered approach, not the what's going to happen approach. People have this assumption, they'll say, well, I know who I am, and I'll wink at them, I go, I bet you don't. I bet you there's more to you than you realize. So I'm actually complimenting them. At first it seems a little cheeky that you don't, because what you know about yourself may be shallower than you realize. You might be a little asleep. You might be not aware. You might not as fully understand what you're here for. So you kind of know yourself because you know where your car is and what your name is and what your serial number is, etc. That's not really knowing yourself. So there's different ways of knowing yourself, and I'm not going to try and say that there aren't others that go beyond astrology through experiences, etc. Of course, but astrology has this archetypal lens that can see deeply into, and it sees that Your experiences aren't just random circumstantial bad luck. Oh, you're just making bad choices. Oh, that person's just an idiot. No, it shows that, oh, for example, let's say somebody has a Venus-Mars square. It says, oh, you're going to have relationship difficulties with your partner in love life. You know what? If not 90%, 99% of the time, yes, they're going, yes, that's right. Now everybody has their troubles there, but some have it acute. When they understand, oh my God, that's an area where you're supposed to grow and learn, become more patient, more participatory, like you said, more cooperative, more responsible. You said it. Now, having said all that, so this healing model, you become engaged in your own growth, evolution. When you take a natal chart and it's the snapshot of the planets when you were born, if you have the exact time, it's really crystal clear, like very sharp pixeled and beautiful. But even if you didn't know the exact time, you can see a lot. Even if I know just what day you're born on alone, I can already see quite a bit. If I get to the exact time, oh my God, well, there you go. Now I can measure, this is a traditional astrological model, is where are the, like that's a static photo shot, like a snapshot of the heavens at the moment you took your first breath. That's the prana, the spiritual aspect is there. But then all the planets are moving all the time, still in motion, and then it creates what I call a cosmic chemistry. And this is just this, we're talking about transits now. There's different types of measuring cycles, but we're going to stick with transits. Transits are where are the planets in real time right now, okay, that's the generic story. That's the weather report. That's what a lot of astrologers put out there. Right now, there's going to be an eclipse on the 21st. No, there's Venus is in Cancer and Mars is in Leo. And it talks like that. It says, okay, this is how it's going to manifest. And we'll talk about each sign of the zodiac because it can in a very general kind of way. And it can apply. People go, wow, that applies. Oh my God, okay, that's cool. But more specifically, the natal chart, based on that first, on your birthday, month, year, minute, place, those factors, those 5, we can see the chart. If we don't have the time, we can still do it, but it's sharper. Then we look at where the planets are. Now, the reason we talk about the far planets, Tyson, is because the further the planet, the more power it has. It's counterintuitive. You would think the close planets would have the more impact, but that's physics. That's physics. No. This is metaphysics. Metaphysics says, no, stop measuring frequency waves. We're not talking about frequencies. We're not talking about, resonant. It's not like that. No. You see, it's the best way to describe it is in a holistic model. The whole solar system, take the solar system as a whole. There's a sun at the center and it has all these planets. Size no longer really matters. For example, say you're talking about Pluto. Well, let's say Pluto is like your pituitary gland, or let's just say it's your glandular system. The glands in the system are small, but they have a big effect, right? So you can look at it in a variety of ways. So now what I'm getting at here, partially, is that the far planets, even little teeny tiny Pluto, in a metaphysical model, is not as small as it seems anymore. It's powerful. That's why, Pluto, plutonium, if you like. You can remember it that way. It's very, very powerful. Pluto and all Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, for example, even Jupiter and Saturn, etc. They move rather slowly and they retrograde a lot because they do move quite slowly. So we can watch them over a point, meaning in juxtaposition to your natal chart, and we'll show this process. Let's say Pluto. It can go over a certain point in your chart 5 times. And it can do it over like 3-4 years. You're like, oh my God, are you kidding? And you go, yeah, it's going to be like a 3-year process that you're going to go through this very deep, powerful transformation. And they will, by synchronicity. It's a provable, demonstrable fact, not like guessing. That's the funny thing about people who deem themselves scientists. Well, they'll say, oh, that astrology, that doesn't work. Oh, really? Have you studied it? No. Well, have you done any investigation? No. Have you ever, statistical looking at to it, observational? No. So is that science or is that religion you're talking about? We're not believing things here. Astrologers don't believe any. The average astrologer who knows what they're talking about goes, I don't believe anything. They observe. They observe. They're observational, and they're observing or they're checking in with their client. Does this make sense to you? They'll say. Do you feel? Yes, that's what's happening. Okay, it's not random. It's not just circumstantial. It's happening on purpose by destiny. It has a certain rhyme and reason. There's a meaning behind it. Now, your job is to engage consciously as possible and to participate in a co-creative way. So that, which could include being patient, and also we can tell how long it's going to last and when the peak points are going to occur. It's that scientific. It's that scientific, just exactly. Now, the reality is there's other factors going on simultaneously, like Pluto's doing its thing, Neptune's doing its, Uranus is doing it, so it's like, oh boy. And some are in wax. See, the Pluto could be waxing to one planet, but waning to another. So you when you say waxing and waning, it's a little bit more complicated than it seems. There's a whole symphony of waxing and waning going on. Okay. Now, this is happening also within the context of a life where you're born, you mature, you start to grow older, and you eventually, leave the physical body and die, as the saying goes. But so there's a certain way of looking at life that way too, which is very valid. Whether you're in your 10 or your teens or in your 20s, 30s, 40s, there's a certain angle of perception that, generally speaking, we can expect certain things in certain age decades, if you like. So you can look at it that way. But then that's kind of like the horizontal perspective. Then the transits bring in this vertical perspective. They start to show much more particular relationship you're having with existence. I want to add one more piece here, just one final one for now. Is you can have people born at the same moment, at the same time, twins, if you like, born a minute apart. And they'll have the exact same planetary aspects going on. Okay, they will, same time. And this is where people will poke holes in it. They'll say, well, there you go, it doesn't work. And I'm saying, no, that's linear thinking. That's traditional mindset of astrology, which sort of is more akin to linear physics or science, if you like. So push, pull, black, white, this will happen, that'll happen. But when you bring in the human factor, you say, well, that individual has their own soul, and they're in relationship to life and existence their way, so we shouldn't expect that it's going to manifest the same way. That is a tough one for some to, so I've said a lot with what I just said, so I'm going to slow down here. But that one, it sort of represents this, in the Bible, first commandment, have no God before me, I like to bring up this intimate relationship we're having with existence. So even twins, I've looked at this I've done the charts of many twins. It's really quite exciting. I just want to add a little something. There's a whole other factor, and I've done different things along the way. So I'm certified also, in addition to life coaching and astrology. I also am well versed in what's called birth order. I studied it because I was really interested in knowing what's the difference between, let's say twins. And the answer is one's older, technically, by a minute, and one's younger. So that becomes the older than the younger. And by the way, each child in birth order links to the different genetic line. One's linked to the mother, one's linked to the father. It's as simple as that. There's no question about it. No maybes, no ifs, no endless genetic da-da-da-da-da. Not to dismiss genetics, but it's woven into that there's a psycho-spiritual principle in older, younger. And but more so, or at least as much, or also, it's one's deferring to the mother line, one's to the father line. Oh my God. And you'll see that in twins. Sometimes they're really close, but of course they're different souls incarnate, etc. So I just want to throw that in there to, dismiss or just to challenge at least objections. Because both twins, they love that one. It's like, okay, well, the twin objection. Well, anyway, so that's a way of looking at the far planets really quickly. The far planets are all the planets in astrology are archetypal. They represent archetypal principles. Is the best. There's more to what I'm saying, much more. It requires a lot of elaboration to explain that the planets aren't causing what's happening strictly. They they kind of are participating in a creative process. It's true, but they're more also reflective of. It's a real tricky one, this one. Are the planets causing it? If they're participating in the process of causing it, it's because, and this is the important understanding, the solar system operates as a whole. It's like I call a cosmic cell. The entire solar system is a cosmic cell. Imagine that. So tiny isn't a big deal anymore. Tiny is your, it's the capillaries in your body, if you like. It's small, but it's meaningful and important. The heart's not that big, and neither is the brain. They're kind of small. You follow, in light of the body mass. So this notion of, bigger, smaller, and Pluto's small, so there's far, it has no meaning. It's like, you're already, I look at them and go, that's just physics. Not to underestimate the value and importance of physics, by the way, but you have to think metaphysically, holistically with astrology. So that's that's a quick jab at it. There's more to say, but
that's really, really fascinating. I would maybe be bold enough to say, rightly or wrongly, that when you get into humanistic astrology and you're talking about holism, then you're moving out of the concept of time and even of space. You're really talking about holism, that the past and the present are contained, or the past and the future contained in time present. And therefore that allows for what we call synchronicity to appear like it comes out of nowhere. Well, it isn't out of nowhere. It's just that all of those aspects are aligned to allow that to happen in the now moment. But, as we get close to the end of our time together, I'm curious, in this whole wonderful iteration of cycles within cycles that you're showing that are impacting us, how then does an eclipse, what sort of effect does that have on us, seeing as we have an eclipse that's coming up?
All right, thank you for that. An eclipse it's what truly is a supermoon, but especially a solar eclipse. But the irony of the common mindset of a supermoon is this big moon. I was just writing about it. The big moon is an optical illusion. Okay, which is exciting, and there's nothing to, I've certainly enjoyed seeing that. Everybody does. Wow, it's the moon, it's so massive. Oh my God, how epic, right? A solar eclipse is really epic. Now, it's big in quality, not in size. It's not an illusion, and some are more powerful than others, but the one that's the most powerful isn't just generically powerful, like for everybody, strictly speaking. There's how is that particular new moon factoring in your chart? And the most immediate level is, what's the degree of that new moon, the one coming up on August 21st? It's called the Great American Moon. And that is because there's a path to an eclipse, and it basically starts in the southeast of the United States and ends in the northeast of the United States. And it starts actually in the Atlantic and ends in the Pacific, strictly speaking, but it traverses like a cross cut from southeast to northwest in the United States. It doesn't even touch Canada, so it's really, and it's believed and recognized, not just believed, but observed, that the path of the eclipse is where the dynamic of that will have an impact more than other places. But any person in the world, if the eclipse degree, this is where it's not, there's a location principle, physics, you could say, but there's also a non-locational in the sense that the degree of it, once again, if you have planets at that degree approximately, and they're very directly affected, then you're going to experience a trigger, an activation. And a solar eclipse, especially a total solar eclipse, is considered the most powerful. And so it's, literally the blackening of the sun, etc. at that moment. The moon coming in front, that exact ratio of time and space. And it produces a trigger effect. But even a partial, if it's right on an important point in your chart, a partial solar eclipse will have a big effect too. So But main thing is simply that solar eclipse, which is a new moon, is a powerful seed event. And interestingly enough, it brings forward, because the moon for a moment is in front of the sun. So the sun is the now, the moon represents the past. So it actually, in a certain sort of way, represents something that's been brewing for a long time, that's ready to come to fruition now. It's been there. Whereas a lunar eclipse is more something new, something fresh. It's because the moon itself, which represents the past, is eclipsed, this sort of thing. Basically, that's the basic rule of thumb. So any person in the world at the moment of the eclipse or shortly thereafter, the next few days or week and so forth, but usually very close to the day, if they have a planet or an angle in their chart, ascendant, descendant, etc., we'll keep it simple, will experience a shift. Now that what it will produce is dependent upon a closer observation of you and your life and your chart and other factors. There's a lot of factors. It's not as simple as it might seem to some. There's a lot of layers to astrology, as would be true of any good science, because life is sophisticated and complex in the natural scheme of things. The natural order is not some idle, simple thing just figure out. It's got layers of complexity, just like a computer does. Layers and anything sophisticated, right? Any machinery, anything. So it's the same thing with our very psyche, etc. There's layers, and the astrology sees that. And that becomes the art of astrology, to be able to decipher closely what impacts are occurring, what their meaning is, not just what will happen. That's traditional astrology. What you can do to consciously co-create and participate with that. So although eventful things will occur beyond our immediate choice co-creation, and that's true, it still remains, how do you interpret it? What are you going to do with it? And admittedly, traditional astrology does engage there, but it kind of more specifically wants to prove almost, or provide information that says, this is going to happen, it's going to affect these areas of your life, and good luck, kind of thing. It goes into this almost good luck area. Admittedly, traditional astrologers,
It seems to me, and again, this is just intuitive, so there's no basis of looking at charts or even deep understanding, but it seems to me that if the past is crashing into the future, then it has an element of cleanup. It seems like almost like pushing a huge reset button. You have a chance to reconfigure how you're showing up in the now moment. No, I don't know if that's worthy or interpretation or not.
I think your intuitive interpretations are right on, Tyson, and I think that is a very valid way of looking at it. Yes, it does have. Reset's a good phrase, word. Activation is another one, but reset's a good one. Both are, there may be other words. It could be a series of keywords. Reset's a good one, you're right. It's going to have such a charge. So just like a reset, like you say, it sort of reactivates in a kind of pure way. But admittedly, the only reason I slightly hesitate there, but I think it's accurate, is because it can activate what can be interpreted as fresh. So like reset refreshes, but it could be that in the larger scheme of your life, you haven't had the level of, or quality or type of experience that the reset is producing. It's a little bit like, for example, it comes to mind, let's say I reboot my computer, and I do, and there it's refreshed, and it's kind of moving fast again, etc. It feels clean, but then I look at the computer and there's this program I haven't engaged with yet. So with my nice fast computer now, I open that, boom, and I'm into this new thing. that would be an example of how it's not merely or solely a reset, but it's that and an activation, like almost like I like the word invitation. We can say it, an invitation, right. An inspiration, but it could be equally a provocation.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. If you're not ready for it and you're not really aware, it could, well, to put it bluntly, set you on your butt.
If you're really out of tune and or any kind of a series of factors, that's where our co-creative responsibility weaves in very closely with the journey. And it says we don't want to get fearful and neurotic about it. And it's not about trying to be perfect. It's not like that. But in life, due to various either external orientations, generally external orientations, we get pulled off our authenticity. That's why that word's so important. We get pulled off and we become living an outer life. And what the otherwise rich potential of that person's being isn't being tapped. It's not like they can't, but in the moment, they're unaware. It's like just below consciousness of how, or that they should, or that they could, or why would they? And so they become a little bit like kind of outer directed, either friends or activities that are valid and maybe wonderful, but they can lose their purpose too. They become
right. So we're Barry and I are at the end of the show, and this is the third in a 4-part series. It's been a really exciting discussion. So Michael, where are we going in the next, the last one?
In the last one, continuing, this one was really encapsulated a lot, so I feel really good about this. In the last one, it just comes to mind to invite people to participate in ask, we can get more questions. That's a good way of going about it. I'll have to think about it. To tell you the truth, I forgot what I put down in my review, because we covered so much in this one, I didn't think we moved quite as quickly, but it felt good. It was accelerated. So a few examples comes to mind, and we can do those in different ways. Either we can have a few call-ins, or we can take some examples. I will leave you on a slightly different note, though. Not to stray off focus, but quickly, I and others astrologers certainly have been writing that Donald Trump, for example, has Mars conjunct the ascendant in Leo, and his Mars is just on the 12th house side of the ascendant in Leo. And the eclipse is going to activate both. It's going to be right in between the two in his chart. So he's about to get a big activation, and it'll be interesting to see how that manifests with him being so public and loud, shall we say, and hard to dismiss. He's already operating with that Leo rising sign and Mars there, but this is about to jolt that to the next level. So I have to admit, I'm hoping that he handles that well, and by destiny and choice, that it's meant to bring him to a new level of success, quite frankly. His success is our success, right? So anyway,
right.
Okay, I just want to throw that in as a last little bridge to what we're talking about eclipses. But as far as this goes, just an ongoing discussion of the healing model. Where we didn't go is more of an elaboration on the healing, a bit more for one, in terms not merely of quick fixes or somebody just doing it for you. It's more a discussion of you consciously engaging in your evolution and growth. So you're healing to increased levels of equilibrium and flow, and how that can be brought to new levels of satisfaction, etc. That's where I think we'll just take it.
All right, great. So I've just posted up www.thewellnessshow.ca. That's the home page for the Wellness Show. You can also go to Facebook into groups and just type in the Wellness Show. That's a great place to ask questions of Michael for the upcoming last in this series. You can ask questions there. And of course, you can also leave them on the Facebook page underneath this show. You can also head over to the YouTube channel, the Academy YouTube channel. It will be there, and you can leave comments there. So we'll just pick up all those comments from all the different places. Wherever you show up and leave a comment, we'll put that together and ask Michael these tough, integrative, wonderful questions from you and make this a very participatory show. And if not, Michael and I are just going to carry on as usual, have a great time, and learn and grow together, and hopefully you will do the same with us. So that's it for now. It was a great show. Thank you ever so much, Michael, and we will catch you soon.
Okay, thank you, Tyson.
Bye for now.
Good afternoon. Bye for now.
For quality online wellness products, courses, and services, visit our sponsors, thewellnessstore.ca and the Extraordinary Healing Arts Academy located at thewellnessacademy.ca. To stay in touch, visit us at thewellnessshow.ca. And until next time, be healthy, wealthy, and wise.